In a small town in Vermont, the Johnson family was preparing for Christmas Eve. The snow fell gently outside, and the house was filled with the warm glow of string lights and the scent of pine. Amelia, the youngest in the family, was excited to hang her favorite ornament on the tree. That evening, as the family sat down to dinner, there was a knock at the door. It was unusual for anyone to visit during a snowstorm, especially on Christmas Eve. Mr. Johnson opened the door to find a man standing there, shivering and pale. The stranger introduced himself as David, saying his car had broken down nearby. He asked if he could come in to warm up and call for help. The Johnsons, being kind-hearted, invited him inside without hesitation. David sat near the fire, his expression unreadable. Amelia noticed something odd: his clothes didn't match the weather, and his eyes seemed distant. When Mrs. Johnson offered him food, he declined, saying he wasn't hungry. As the evening went on, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered, and the family dog, Max, growled at David, something he had never done before. David simply smiled and asked to use the phone, but the line was dead. Feeling uneasy, Mr. Johnson suggested David stay the night since the storm was worsening. David agreed but requested to sleep in the living room near the tree. That night, Amelia woke up to the sound of faint whispers. She crept downstairs and saw David standing by the tree, staring at the ornaments. He turned to her and said, "This tree reminds me of home, so long ago." Amelia noticed tears streaming down his face, but his reflection in the window didn't match his movements. By morning, David was gone, and so were several of their ornaments. In his place was a note: "Thank you for the warmth. It's been decades since I felt the Christmas spirit." Later, the Johnsons discovered that David had died in a car accident on Christmas Eve, 50 years ago, just down the road. It was Christmas Eve in London, and the streets were alive with carolers spreading holiday cheer. Lucy, a single mother, and her daughter, Sophie, were enjoying a quiet evening at home. They were decorating cookies when they heard faint singing outside their door. Curious, Sophie ran to the window and saw a group of carolers dressed in Victorian-era clothing. Lucy found it odd, as she hadn't heard of any historical reenactments in their area. Sophie begged her mother to invite them in for cocoa, as they had always done with carolers. When Lucy opened the door, the singers greeted her with warm smiles. Their voices were beautiful but haunting, echoing through the chilly night air. Lucy invited them inside, offering them hot drinks to warm up. As they stepped in, Sophie noticed something peculiar: their footsteps didn't leave marks on the snow. The carolers introduced themselves, each with old-fashioned names like Eleanor, Charles, and Margaret. Their mannerisms were polite but unnervingly stiff, as if they were actors staying in character. They sang carols for nearly an hour, their melodies filling the house with an eerie yet captivating aura. When Lucy offered them cookies, they politely declined, saying they didn't eat sweets. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor handed Sophie a small, intricately carved wooden angel. "Keep this," she said. "It will bring you protection." Lucy thanked them, but as they left, she noticed something chilling. Their reflections in the window disappeared as they walked away. That night, Sophie woke up screaming, saying she had seen shadows in her room. Lucy rushed to her side and noticed the wooden angel glowing faintly. She tried to comfort Sophie but felt a cold breeze pass through the house. The next morning, Lucy researched the carolers and discovered a tragic story. A group of Victorian singers had died in a fire while caroling on Christmas Eve over a century ago. The angel remained on Sophie's nightstand, and from that day on, their home felt protected, but never alone. Mark and his friends, Sarah, Liam, and Chloe, decided to spend Christmas at a secluded cabin in the Rocky Mountains. The idea was to escape the city and enjoy a peaceful holiday surrounded by nature. The cabin was old but charming, with a large fireplace and a towering Christmas tree. On their first night, they heard strange noises outside. Liam dismissed it as wildlife, but Sarah insisted it sounded like footsteps. Chloe joked about it being Santa, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The next day, they found peculiar marks in the snow around the cabin. The footprints were too large to be human and too deliberate to belong to an animal. Sarah suggested they leave, but the group decided to stay, thinking it was just their imagination. That evening, as they exchanged gifts, the power went out. The cabin plunged into darkness, and the temperature dropped rapidly. Liam grabbed a flashlight and headed to the basement to check the generator. Minutes later, they heard him scream. Rushing downstairs, they found Liam unconscious, a deep scratch running down his back. He couldn't remember what had happened, only that he had felt something cold and sharp. Terrified, the group huddled by the fireplace, trying to stay awake. Around midnight, the cabin filled with an unearthly howl, and the Christmas tree began to shake violently. Ornaments shattered, and the lights blinked on and off. Suddenly, the front door burst open, revealing a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. It stepped inside, its form massive and grotesque, covered in fur and ice. Mark grabbed a fire poker, but the creature stopped and stared at the star atop the tree. As if in pain, it let out a deafening roar and retreated into the night. The next morning, they found claw marks on the cabin walls and a single ornament left untouched, a hand-carved wooden star. Locals later told them about the legend of a mountain spirit that haunted the area, punishing those who trespassed during its sacred season. These stories remind us that even during the most joyful time of the year, darkness can linger in unexpected places. Kindness, respect, and understanding the unknown can often protect us. Some traditions and warnings are worth heeding, for not all Christmas visitors come bearing gifts.